Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Cebu Land Masters Incorporated Annual Stockholders Meeting. I am your host for today, Clarissa Cabalda from Investor Relations. Before we officially start, I would like to acknowledge the attendance of our independent directors and top management, starting with our lead independent director and chair of the RPT Committee, Director Rufino Manotoc, Director Aurora Giotina Garcia, Chair of the Audit Committee, Director Jasmine Oporto, Chair of the Nomination and Corporate Governance Committee, Director Stephen Tan, Director Joanna Marie Berganthal, VP for Marketing, Executive Vice President and Treasurer, Director Maria Rosario Soberano, Chief Operating Officer, Director Jose Franco Soberano, Chief Finance Officer, Director Beauregard Granchang, and of course, the Chairman of the Board, President, and CEO, Director Jose Soberano III. Together with us also in this live webcast are the members of the Cebu Land Masters and representatives from our external auditors, Punong Bayan and Araulio. Note that any questions to the panelists may be placed in the Q&A box provided at the bottom of the screen. These will be answered during the Q&A portion. Now, to officially start the meeting, we welcome our chairman, Mr. Jose Soberano III.
Good morning, fellow shareholders. Pursuant to our bylaws and in my capacity as chairman of Cebu Land Masters, I now call this annual stockholders meeting to order. Mr. Corporate Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have a quorum. As of the record date for this annual stockholders meeting, we have a total of 16 stockholders holding 1,648,500,000 CLI shares of stock. Of this number, 9 stockholders represented by 29 proxies holding 69.78% of the total outstanding shares are present either in person or remotely via Zoom, our video conference facility for today's meeting. For the information of the chairman and the shareholders in attendance, the Office of the Corporate Secretary published the notice of meeting with the Philippine Daily Inquirer on May 11 and 12 and made all materials for today's meeting available on our website. This is in compliance with the issuances of the Securities and Exchange Commission, particularly Memorandum Circular Number 6, Series of 2020, governing the conduct of stockholders meeting remotely via tele and video conference. May therefore acknowledge the presence of all shareholders joining us remotely via Zoom. They are all shown on the screen. Once again, Mr. Chairman, I certify that we have a quorum and that all stockholders have been duly notified. We may proceed with today's order of business.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. At this point, let's take a moment to review the minutes of the previous annual stockholders meeting held on May 28, 2019. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of last year's annual stockholders meeting?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I am Remelin Gibao, a proxy of AB Soberano Holdings Corporation, and I move to approve the minutes of the annual stockholders meeting held on May 28 last year.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I am Leo Arabis, a proxy of AB Soberano Holdings Corporation, and I second the motion.
There's a motion for the approval of the minutes of last year's annual stockholders meeting, which has been duly seconded. Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, may we call on our Chief Finance Officer, Mr. Grant Cheng, to report on the financial updates of Cebu Land Masters.
Okay, good morning everyone and my fellow shareholders of Cebu Land Masters. I am honored and privileged to deliver to you the CFO's report for the financial performance of Cebu Land Masters encompassing our fiscal year 2019, and I will also give you an update on our financial performance for the first quarter of 2020 thus far. In financial year 2019, we sustained our earnings momentum growth, where we were able to deliver a net income to our shareholders of 2.01 billion pesos, up from 1.667 billion pesos from the same period of last year. This was driven by a 26% growth in our consolidated revenues to 8.499 billion, up 26% from previous year's numbers of 6.76 billion pesos. This has translated into earnings per share based on the weighted average number of outstanding shares of 1.21 pesos per share of CLI compared to 98 centavos per share last year. We were able to achieve such growth while maintaining what we believe and what we perceive to be as above average margins. Our gross profit margin is at 49%, EBITDA margin at 39%, and our net income after tax margin at 29%. Our cash flow continues to be in line with the natural life cycle of a real estate developer, which is reflective of the growth and the ongoing construction that CLI is undertaking to deliver on our contracted sales obligations already. So this is a sign that we continue to spend capital in order to deliver on revenues already that we have contracted. Hence, the cash flow from operating activities stands at negative 3 billion, from investing activities at negative 2.2, and it's financed with 5.3 billion cash flow from financing activities. Next slide. For a capital-intensive industry with such cash flow like Cebu Land Masters, it's imperative to have a strong and healthy balance sheet, which continues to be one of our top priorities as we navigate this environment. In a challenging environment, in fact, it is your balance sheet that will see you through these challenges and that will allow you and dictate and serve as your safeguard in order to continue your operations. And as of the end of 2019, we believe that we have maintained healthy numbers in our balance sheets. Our assets, total balance sheet grew from 25.42 billion to 38.28 billion as of the end of 2019. And this was mostly driven by an increase in our real estate inventory, our receivables, as well as mostly by our contracted assets, as well as investment properties. Our debt to equity ratio stands at 1.23, less than half of what our legal debt covenants are with our different financing institutions. Our interest coverage ratio is 4 times, and our current ratio at 2.56 times. All very comfortable margins and levels from any of our debt covenants. Next slide. You can see that our net income for the first quarter, that momentum has carried through from last year. We had a solid start to 2020 despite the COVID crisis. And without preempting the report of our Chief Operating Officer, we're happy to report that the environment for COVID has been challenging for Cebu Landmasters, as well it has been for the entire economy in our country and globally as well. But the important thing to remember is that the degree to which restrictions and the degree to which quarantines were implemented in the different LGUs and environments varied across the cities. All of which is to say that wherever CLI has been allowed to continue our operations, we have done so. And this has allowed us to deliver growth and continue to deliver revenues to our shareholders in the first quarter of 2020. This has translated to total revenues of 2.1 billion in the first quarter of 2020 compared to 1.87 billion last year, a growth of 13%. So this is where I continue to build my point that this 13% growth would have been actually higher had we been allowed to continue our operation. We believe that these are results that you can rightfully be proud of. Our consolidated net income after tax stands at 648.5 million pesos, translating to a parent net income after tax of 572 million. This has translated to an earnings per share of 34 centavos for the first quarter of 2020. Next slide. The 13% increase in consolidated revenues to 2.1 billion was driven mostly by our mid-market series, the Garden series, contributing 46.2% of our revenues in 2020. To be specific, these are driven by the Mivela condominium project that we launched here in Banilad, Cebu from the last quarter. And so the construction progress of this fastest selling condo project in Cebu has been one of the primary drivers of our revenues this quarter. It is also driven by the project completion of Belmiro Uptown in Cagayan de Oro. Cebu continues to account for the majority of the revenues. 61% came from Cebu. But I think it is noteworthy that other localities such as Cagayan de Oro, Bacolod, and Davao continuously have been contributing significantly to our revenues as well. And we project, based on our pipeline and our current completion rates, that they will play a larger and larger relative role in our revenue recognition going forward. Next slide. Our revenues have not only been underpinned by our percentage of completion progress, but also by the steady demand of residential projects in Visayas and Mindanao. And I think this is the one slide that is testament to the unyielding and the undiminished demand for affordable housing in Vismin. Because as the world may be in convulsion right now, this fundamental fact hasn't changed. There is a fundamental shortfall in housing backlog, especially for the markets that Cebu Landmaster is serving here in Vismin. And this is evinced by the fact that in April and May of this year, if I may draw your attention to the last column in blue for quarter 1 2020, you could see that although our sales for first quarter 2020 clocked in at 2.82 billion compared to 3.8 billion last year, our reservation sales for April and May is already at 2 billion. In fact, so our reservation sales in April and May this year has already outpaced the entire reservation sales that we were able to achieve from quarter 2 last year. And the table on the right just highlights the type of market that continues to see strong demand, and CLI is well positioned to serve. You could see that in the first 5 months of 2020, our affordable housing brand, or the Casamira brand, the well-known and well-loved Casamira brand that we have piloted and deployed in various regions in Vismin, now accounts for 73% of our revenues. As compared to last year, in the 6 months of 2019, it was the Premier series or the high-end series that drove much of our reservation sales at 47%. So this highlights not only CLI's versatility in terms of being able to address the various demands of the market and which market segment we can better cater to in uncertain times. But it also highlights our agility and the merits of what we've always been calling as our land bank light strategy, where we can refocus our energy and efforts in a very agile manner so that we serve the market that exists. Next slide. Our unrecognized revenues stands at 14.5 billion. So this simply means that over the next few quarters, in fact, up to the next year, we still have much more revenues that we are prepared and poised to recognize as long as we're able to deliver project completion. Next slide. And our balance sheet as of Q1 2020 continues to be quite strong. In fact, if anything, it has only improved from the year end of 2020. We have our debt equity ratio stands barely changed. It's now at 1.3 times. Our interest coverage ratio is at 6.15 times, and our liquidity ratio is at 2.7 times. We were able to manage our balance sheet and in fact improve our balance sheet due to the recent successful fundraising that CLI was able to close back in February of 2020. A most fortuitous timing, if I may say so myself. Next slide, please. Our corporate notes that we executed in February, we were able to raise 8 billion pesos worth of corporate notes. And we disclosed this earlier, we were oversubscribed at the low end of the pricing range among several institutions. Eventually, we allocated our corporate notes to the following 6 financial institutions. We have drawn twice from our corporate notes. We've been able to borrow 10-year money at 5.23% and 7-year money at 4.66%. Quite good rates. In fact, our rates today is much better than they were last year. Our incremental borrowing cost stands at 3.67 for 5-year money, 3.9 for 7-year money, and 4.18 for 10-year money. This puts CLI in prime position and with various options to further improve our balance sheet. This assures continued funding of our operations. This assures that despite our shift in strategy to be very judicious and very picky in our acquisitions, we will have enough funding to fund such acquisitions wherever we choose to. And we can assure all our buyers, investors, suppliers, and contractors that whenever we have obligations and whenever we have launch projects, we are fully committed to delivering them. We are fully committed to delivering those projects and completing those projects, and that we have our funding lined up for them. In addition to corporate notes, we are also highlighting the strength of our bilateral relationships with various financing institutions, in fact, the biggest financing institutions in the country. In aggregate, we have 41.23 billion pesos worth of approved loan facilities with several of the biggest banking institutions in the Philippines, of which we've drawn less than half of those facilities. This means that overall, we have close to 21 billion pesos worth of untapped or undrawn facilities that we are ready to deploy wherever our strategy requires them to. And I think at this point, I'd like to highlight to everyone some very positive points about how CLI has been managing its debt and cash flow. In fact, CLI has not had any need to avail of the grace period or the waiver periods granted by the recently enacted Bayanihan to Heal as One Act granted by the Philippine authorities. In fact, if anything, CLI actually paid on time or in fact earlier some of their obligations. This in order to bring down our overall borrowing costs. So CLI did not only not avail of the waiver periods, we actually paid them early. We've used our strong balance sheet and our available funding lines to in fact rationalize our debt maturity profile. And so if you look at our debt maturity towers over the next few years, they're much more constant. There are not a lot of outstanding towers there. all very manageable cash flows that allow CLI management to be nimble and agile and have options on how to deal with any principal payments going forward, all while driving borrowing costs lower to take advantage of the much lower benchmark rates at the moment. Next slide. All of which translates to what I personally believe is quite compelling value to all of us fellow CLI shareholders. In the first quarter of 2020, CLI has already delivered 7.36% return on equity on the parent at today's stock price. That translates to a 34 centavo earnings per share just in the first quarter alone of 2020. Our book value per share is 4.73 pesos per share, which translates to a price to book value of 79 centavos per share. Or sorry, 79 times price to book value. Next slide. And so the company who has been committed to our shareholders from the time that we went public, not only has been paying dividends annually, increasing dividends at that from 15 centavos in 2018 to 20 centavos and now 25 centavos that we recently paid out in the previous months. We've also continued our share buyback program where we feel share values are quite compelling. So we'd like to demonstrate, in fact, that this is not only an effort by CLI, but our principal shareholders as well, wherein they've also accumulated back some of the common shares in the market in support of our stock price. And this slide reflects as such. And we won't be shy to use our share buyback program, allocated share buyback program, whenever the opportunity presents itself and whenever it makes sense for us to do so. Next slide. And so I thank everyone again for the privilege and honor of serving as your Chief Financial Officer. It will be a challenging year, but I believe there's no other company that is as well prepared and as ready as ever to emerge from this, not only to emerge, but to navigate this environment and emerge from this environment while still delivering value to our shareholders, to our buyers, and to our homeowners. Thank you very much, and that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Grant, for your report. Do I hear a motion to approve the CFO's report?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I am Rebecca Bastorillo, a proxy of AB Soberano Holdings Corp., and I move for the approval of the CFO's report.
Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chairman, I am Maria Lourdes Marquez, a proxy of AB Soberano Holdings Corp., and I second the motion.
There's a motion for the approval of the CFO's report, which has been duly seconded. Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is carried.
Give us updates on the projects and other milestones of the company. Let me welcome our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Jose Franco Soberano.
Hi, a pleasant good morning, everyone. And it's nice to hold our first ever Zoom annual stockholders meeting. But we're very honored to be sharing this momentous annual occasion with you. And through my report, we hope to give you a good perspective of what your company has been doing the last year. Next slide. So in 2015, your leaders at CLI set the courageous goal of becoming the leading real estate player in the Visayas and Mindanao by 2020. Inspired by a series of successful projects and backed by a team of motivated real estate professionals, we set our sights on this 5-year dream to become the leading player in the region. Fast forward to 2019, your company has not only become the leading real estate player in Vismin, but it was bestowed the honor as the best developer in the Philippines by the prestigious Philippine Property Awards. This was a defining year for the company. But more than the awards and the accolades, this was a validation of the strength of the organization, the soundness of our strategy implementation, and the sheer commitment to deliver beyond what is expected. I think that is the CLI way that has allowed us to outperform even our own internal aspirations. So to our dear shareholders, these awards are for you. And of course, our customers, our employees, these honors are for you. Next slide. So we're also proud to announce that a third-party market study has declared CLI as the leading developer in BizMin by virtue of market share. So you can see that our company controls or captures 12% of the total supply in the BizMin region, and that supply is growing. Next slide. We're also very happy to announce that we will still be launching 14 projects this year. We are very motivated that in spite of the very challenging headwinds that we face, we have recent success in the months of April and May that are inspiring us to continue pushing forward because families still need homes, workers still need to continue working, and we feel that we have to continue serving this market. And the 2 billion sales generated over the difficult months of April and May are inspiring us more to continue what we love to do, and that's building homes. So out of the 14 projects we've done so far, we've already launched 2. That is Casamira, Iloilo, and Belmiro, Bohol. Next slide. So these are a few of our upcoming launches. So in our company, we say that we are moving forward with prudence and conviction. We are able to do this because of the great organization we have. We are confident in the abilities of our team and in the passion of our team to come up with these projects. So you have more economic housing units that will be launched in Cebu, in Cagayan de Oro, soon in Ormoc, Dumaguete, and we'll have our first horizontal housing projects in Davao, where CLI has a very extensive growing presence. Next slide. You'll see a few more Casamira. So you'll notice that Casamira, the slogan is more for the Filipino family. This is how economic housing should be done. And I believe we are setting the bar for how value for money, generously planned amenities is possible for our homeowners. Next. We're also happy to report about our growing leasing portfolio. Part of being a sustainable company is to have a very diverse mix of real estate products and real estate sources. So we have already grown from only 6,000 square meters of leasable area to almost 15,000 this year. And with the completion of Latitude Corporate Center, which will be completed by the third quarter this year, we will be close to 28,000 square meters of leasable area. Next. So we believe in the tourism story of the Philippines. We believe in it before, we believe it in today, and we believe in its future as well. We know that there will be adjustment period as the world will adjust to the new norm, add more precautionary measures to travel, to vacationing, but we are confident in the beauty of our islands. So we are happy to report that our very first hotel has already contributed 20 million of operations revenue. Timing is on CLI side because 4 of our hotels that are under construction will still be opening in 2023 to 2024. So we're happy to report we're continuing to build these hotel projects with the hope, with the confidence that tourism will not only return to normal, tourism will even be better by that time. Next. You can say that our organization has been very busy. We have really been part of nation building through our many projects across BizMin. Over the last few months, we have over 20 different projects under construction. Some just started, some at the finishing stages, but these are some of the very successful projects like Baseline Center, 100% sold residential. The offices are almost fully turned over. Our second large mixed use, Astra Center, also very successful with almost sold out residential tower, and the offices and the mall and the hotel going up as well. Next slide, please. And you can see that even during the ECQ period, we've managed to generate certain accomplishments on the site. Like 38 Park Avenue was still able to continue constructing by providing a secure workplace for workers. You can see Latitude Corporate Center was able to install additional glass panels over the ECQ period. So we are a developer that will find a way so we can deliver faster and sooner and better to our homeowners. We're also happy to report that your company has adopted a strategic business unit approach to delivery. We want to make sure that in Cebu, in sites in Visayas and in Mindanao, it's the same high level of excellence that we deliver. So the SBU approach will ensure that our systems will be consistent in all our sites. Even if we're all based in Cebu, the same level of delivery will be expected in all our sites across BISMIN. You can also see here our very successful Mivela Garden Residences project, which Grant already mentioned ahead that this was the fastest selling condo project in Cebu. Even if we launched only last October, you can see that we're practically sold 4 towers. So we were supposed to launch just 2 towers. We had to launch the 4th. Not only that, we even started constructing, and you can see the foundation already being done there. That is the SBO approach that our chairman, Joe, has espoused, and we are now putting that into action. So launch, construct, and achieving the best quality we can. You can see Mivesa Garden Residences now ready for turnover. We are now starting to invite homeowners to inspect their units this month. Next slide. Now, this is one of our best stories. Casamira South, with more than 2,000 units, 100% sold. This is why CLI continues to be confident in the market. There is demand. There is a need. And I think it takes developers like CLI who are very sincere about the way they do business for investors to keep investing. There is truly a housing backlog. And by making our projects more affordable, more attainable, while giving them the highest upside for value appreciation, we know that the investing market will continue to invest. Next slide. This is another great story over the height of the ECQ period. Socialized housing project in Villa Casita North, Bogos City. Houses selling at 480,000 pesos. This is 2 hours from Cebu City, and we were able to sell 435 units at the height of the restrictions. So this inspires us, this awakens us that there is a big need, and CLI will be at the forefront of providing for that need as best as we can. Next slide. So you can see a few more projects in Bohol. As I said, we just launched last February. Now we have some houses being built in Bohol. You can see Casamira Coast Dumaguete, 100% sold. We're starting to prepare for our turnover activities in a few months. And we are launching a second Casamira in Dumaguete. Next slide. You can see our condominiums in Bacolod, which we just started construction 2 years ago. And we're now preparing to start the finishing works and hope to turn over to the first batch of unit owners by early next year or even end of this year. Next slide. So Davao continues to be a very, very important market for us. Our very first project in Davao, Mesa Tierra Garden Residences, 97% sold and nearing the finish line. We followed that up with Paragon, another of our showcase mixed-use projects, and of course, our biggest project to date, the Davao Global Township. 22 hectares of the most prime property in the south of Davao City, creating Davao's most prestigious central business district. And we already midway through the site development. So for our shareholders, we hope to tour you here when it's finished next year. This will really be a showcase of how CLI has grown, and we can't wait to show this to you. And we can't wait for this community to really prosper. Next slide. Cagayan de Oro, you can see 100% sold. And just to let the shareholders know, and we've reported this in our quarterly analyst briefing, in terms of overall inventory of CLI, less than 10% is unsold. So we need to come up with new inventory to sustain to cater to the sustained demand. Next slide. And here are just a few of our accomplishments, and I have to give credit to the CLI organization. It takes the whole team to be able to conceptualize, construct, sell, deliver. And here in your management team, we are really inspired by the commitment of the CLI team. And these are individuals who become family to us. And I believe they will continue finding ways to improve. And we're never satisfied. Now, we feel that we are doing well now, but we have to keep thinking of ways to do even better. Next slide. So a few more projects that are sold out in Cagayan de Oro, Dumaguete, and Casimira South. That's why our chairman later will explain where we will be launching these new projects. These are in sites where we have really ran out of inventory. And with the team we have, our 600-person strong family in CLI, we know that we will push forward with both commitment and conviction for our shareholders. So, Mr. Chairman, my fellow directors, that ends my COO report. It's an honor presenting this to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Franco, for that very exhaustive report. Do I hear a motion to approve the COO report?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I am Ivy Sesvilla, a proxy of AB Soberano Holdings Corporation, and I move for the approval of the COO's report.
Mr. Chairman, I am Amadeo Balistoy III, a proxy of AB Soberano Holdings Corp., and I second the motion.
There's a motion for the approval of the COO's report, which has been duly seconded. Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is carried.
Deliver his message to the shareholders. It is my great pleasure to introduce the Chairman of the Board and CEO of Cebu Land Masters Incorporated, Mr. Jose Soberano III.
Good morning again, my fellow shareholders. Cebu Land Masters delivered another remarkable year of growth in financial performance and strategic expansion. In a short span of 2 years from the time Cebu Land Masters became a publicly listed company, we witnessed our consolidated revenues doubling up and our total asset base growing over 300%. We have diversified our product lines to cater to all market segments of the real estate spectrum, focusing in the Vismin regions where we are now present in 15 key cities. We experienced the stabilization of our inflation rate at 2.5% in 2019 from a high of 5.2% in 2018. Our gross international reserves realized an all-time high of $87.9 billion and central bank lowered interest rates 3 times in 2019, resulting to a benchmark rate at a very manageable level of 4% per annum. These positive macroeconomic numbers and developments boosted Cebu Landmaster's confidence to successfully launch 18 billion worth of projects in 2019. Aided with the increased OFW remittances reaching 30 billion US dollars and household consumption contributing 68.4% of GDP, Cebu Landmasters went on to spend close to 10 billion pesos in capital expenditures or CAPEX in 2019 in completing projects and acquiring 55 hectares of strategic land bank, being primed for expansion. This additional land acquisition contributed to our increased land bank area coverage, totaling now over 125 hectares, which will be utilized to roll out our economic and mid-market residential brands in Casamira and the Garden Series, which are strategically positioned and spread out in key cities of the Vismin region. And this is basically positioned and testament of our land bank light strategy. That when we acquire real estate, it's really intended for immediate development. With this available land bank, this is already programmed for development. It will effectively bring over 12,000 residential units in housing and condominium projects into the company's portfolio to additionally generate about 30 billion pesos worth of real estate within the next 4 years. Cebu Landmasters also continued to engage in larger scale and interactive developments like the 5 mixed-use projects which are in various stages of construction and operations. These projects are the Baseline Center in Cebu City, which is already operational, the Paragon Center in Davao City, the Astra Center in Mandaue City, the 38 Park Avenue in Cebu IT Park, and the Patria de Cebu in downtown Cebu City. We are also completing site development of our 22-hectare Davao Global Township, Davao City's first premier central business district, which we also position, while we also position more business districts and townships to be developed in different areas in Vismin. These are all spread out in Cagayan de Oro, Mandaue City, Bacolod City, Tagbilaran City, and also what we have in the future Ming Mori Reclamation Development in Minglanilla, Cebu. So as we continue to innovate and create world-class developments in our communities, Cebu Landmasters was able to close a landmark deal in 2019 with the engagement of a 2,800 square meter prime lot in Cebu Business Park into a 43-year lease to build an iconic building to house a 6-star hotel mixed with premium offices and retail spaces. So all these expansion moves will definitely support Cebu Landmaster's strategy to strengthen and build up recurring businesses in the next 3 to 5 years due to an expanded gross leasable area of about 200,000 square meters and will contribute healthily to at least 10% of our increasing revenue base. We also are happy to report that we did some acquisitions for some hotel or hospitality businesses. No? We had acquired in last year the Abaca property, and which we will be constructing into a resort development. No? As you can see on the photo, the present site right now. And at the same time, the former Luwai property in Mactan, which we are going to also transform into another hotel project, and could be a mix also of some residential condos. So we also are happy to report that in 2019, we continued forming strategic alliances, with business partners to undertake joint venture projects on high-value properties. This allows Sibulan Masters and our partners to synergize our competencies and business strengths as we add value to the communities we are enhancing due to our projects. In 2019, we were able to partner with established names in the industry and the community, like the Aboitiz Land here in Cebu, the Borromeo Brothers, where we have another property that we agreed to develop in the uptown area of the city. And finally, we were able to close another joint venture deal with a prominent family in Iloilo, headed by Mr. Alfonso Tan. So, moving forward to the first quarter, we just wanted to emphasize that we did have that 125 hectares land bank that were really in line with our land bank light strategy, and we're programmed for development. And even on the first quarter this year, we have managed to develop 4 hectares. I mean, we were able to acquire additional 4 hectares of this property and develop 20 hectares. That brings down our available land bank to about 108 hectares, which we program again for development in the next few years, of which 50 hectares is being programmed for development within the second half of 2020. So all told, as was already been reported by Franco, we in Sibulan Masters have about 40 ongoing projects, in various stages of development, mostly under construction. But we do have about 27 pipeline projects, based on the acquired properties. And 12 of these pipeline projects, which are basically residential, horizontal, and vertical projects, will be launched within the second half of 2020. As was already mentioned by Franco, our inventory is down to 10%, which is something like 10 billion pesos. Now, this additional 12 projects that we will be launching on the second half will add another 19.4 billion pesos worth of inventory, which we can now push for selling to the market. So let me just go over what we have been planning moving forward, for the second quarter up to the fourth quarter of this year. As we in Sibulan Masters, as I've mentioned, is poised to proceed with 19.4 billion worth of launches in 2020. This actually is a move that is addressing evidently the housing backlog, that is so very clear to us here in Bismin. And it has been proven by the 2 billion sales that we were able to generate within the ECQ and lockdown period of middle to April up to end of May this year. So we were able to accelerate this push with the use of our digitalization infrastructure, which has been built even pre-COVID and is now able to service our move to make sales, and connect with our buyers and our brokers and agents. And we would like to also make mention that this will be still reinforced by what is traditionally the strength of Cebulan Masters to involve, the kind of personal touch that we usually do when we close our deals. So the constant communication with our buyers and brokers and sellers and agents has been very fruitful for us. And this has been shown with even deferral requests at the height of the COVID lockdown to only about 500 accounts uh, compared to the 12,500 active accounts that we are servicing. And even the cancellation rate has been very low, which we only have about 200 such cancellation out of the, again, 12,500 active accounts, which actually represent something like less than 1.5% of our total active accounts. This only proves that even with the slowdown, there is that strong demand for housing, especially in Bismin. There might be readings that things will turn cold, especially from the OFW market, but yet we in Cebulan Masters are able to still generate that interest from buyers and still getting a lot of this interest from the OFW market, which represents about 40% of our housing sales. So strong focus will continue to be the norm in terms of construction, which means that we will focus on completing construction on projects that we are aiming to be turned over before the year end of 2020. 7 projects are being lined up to be completed within the second half. And this will translate to something like 5 billion pesos worth of cash inflow to the company. Because as we turn over units, we of course will be able to get their full payments. And that additional cash flow will in fact be very welcome for our operational and administrative needs of the company. And we would just like also to mention that as far as the hotel businesses that we have lined up and other mixed use or leasing businesses, we are not pursuing too much of this development this year because most of these new launches, like the hotels I mentioned in Cebu Business Park and Abaca and Luwai, is being programmed for 2021 or next year. And we will continue to assess the situation, whether there is a need to gradually construct on it or to be able to accelerate them, as the situation, which is still very flexible, will be assessed here, as far as the hospitality business is concerned. I'd like to also make mention that we are glad that we are only operating one hotel right now in Citadine, Cebu City, and that 7 of our other hotels are under construction or under the planning stage. But we are so confident also that 4 or 5 years down the road, things would have really reversed in terms of the demand for more hotel accommodations, not just in our country, but globally. So these are things that we will be discussing with, of course, our bankers on how we will be able to gradually build up on this, the different leasing income or hotel generating income projects. And as we even in addition to the 40 billion approved loans and lines that we have generated, about 10 billion worth of term loans are also being negotiated with the various bankers. Now, at this point, I would like to also make mention that with the inventory that we have lined up for projects, mainly for the residential market in 2020, particularly the second half launches, and even on those land bank that we have already acquired to serve the mixed use and hospitality product lines, there is no need really for Cebu Land Masters to do some major acquisitions this year. No. Of course, we will be having an opportunistic type of posturing that if there will be some real good buys out there, that's probably where we will be able to consider them. And the other thing that I'd like to point out that as we still do have a lot of things to work on, it has never come to the mind of our company that we will be retrenching any of our people. We continue to have this. We are not definitely in a retrenchment mode, although there might be limited hiring, new hires this year, but we will be needing all the support and continued strong efforts from our employees to be able to pursue all of these projects. So this again, well, because of this calculated efforts that we have programmed for the rest of the year, we have this very guarded optimistic posturing that the performance guidance that we expect in terms of earnings will be something like 5 to plus or minus 10% of what we have experienced or generated in 2019. And this could be also supported by some equity play or equity enhancing play as we, particularly our CFO, are already negotiating with some of these private equity investors or even listed companies who have approached us on what possibilities that we could have in the coming months, which equity play we hope to be able to realize within the second half of 2020. So with that, I would just like to also make mention that we are really in very interesting times. We do know that we are facing the COVID-19 global health crisis, which has affected us all. And be rest assured that we in Cebu Land Master has taken the necessary steps and applied the full measures to ensure the safety and health of our employees, our workers and residents, tenants, and even extending medical support to our neighbors within the communities that we are part of. We are steadfast in our commitment to all our stakeholders with the hope and confidence that we will come out of this crisis as a stronger company that is prepared and capable to meet the challenges that lie ahead of us. So I would like us to, I will end here, and may I just request our stakeholders to view this video showing the efforts of Cebu Land Masters, as we also acknowledge the help and assistance given by the frontliners of our company to be able to reach out to the various people and communities that we are serving. Thank you very much. Thank you for that video. Do I hear a motion to approve my chairman's report?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I am Anne Margaret Yap, a proxy of AB Soberano Holdings Corp., and I move for the approval of the President's report.
Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chairman, I am Rebecca Bestorilio, a proxy of AB Soberano Holdings Corp., and I second the motion.
There's a motion for the approval of the chairman's report, which has been duly seconded. Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is carried.
Sir Joe, we may proceed with the adjournment.
Okay, do I hear a motion for adjournment?
Mr. Chair, I am Vasily Claire Temporada, a proxy of AB Soberano Holdings Corp., and I move to adjourn this year's annual stockholders meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I am Gracia Pacania, a proxy of AB Soberano Holdings Corp., and I second the motion.
Any objection? Hearing none, this annual meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the participants. Enjoy the rest of the day.